Day 2 of the September 96 7-day retreat in Springwater. Before starting the talk, the topics, let me say something that I forgot to mention. Usually things that are brought up in group and individual meetings find their way into a talk to be looked at in depth. What someone brings up in a meeting is not recorded in this brain verbatim. Also, it so happens that usually several people in one retreat bring up very similar questions. So these different similar questions may fuse into one. I'm saying it so that in case you don't quite recognize the question that you brought up, not to conclude that you were not heard accurately, which of course is always a possibility. So the first question that came up in a group meeting was, now that I find myself here, actually for the first time in a retreat, what am I to do? This question does not just come up for someone here for the first time. Happens to all of us as we get stuck in this mind of problem solving and doing, having to do something. Or at least the compulsion, the idea, I ought to do something now. And then the question following, what am I doing, or what am I supposed to do? Or is what I'm doing the right thing? Or am I doing something wrong? Does what I am doing make any sense? These are questions which thought brings up. So, how are we going to answer this question when it comes up? Maybe for the first time, maybe for the 100th time. Of course, I do well understand if one is here for the first time, wanting to find out what is the usual thing here. Often people say, what practices do you give new arrivals? Or your old students. Of course, I do not think of people here who are coming together as my students. That thought does not exist for me because it does not apply to our relationship of exploring together, listening quietly, without any stress on personality. So practices I give none. Even though frequently it is mentioned, listening to the cicadas, to the breathing, not just listening to it audibly with a sense of, with auditory sense, but the complete perception of what we call breathing and what we think we know as breathing, but which in truth is not what we know. Something happening every moment, without which we would not continue living. And to feel it, experience it, hear it, see it, touch it, in a new way is a marvelous thing at any time of sitting quietly. Because so many ideas about the breath may drop off, that I'm breathing with the nose or from the nose, through the throat, through the lungs, and maybe the diaphragm is involved. There's all these visualizations, which one may even have practiced. And I'm not putting other practices down, just mentioning that in experiencing what we call breathing in a fresh way, it's amazing to find it's not what we thought or think it is. It's a whole, complete, total process happening now, at all times, now, permeated by insects humming, which aren't here all the time. In the winter, there are no insects humming. Or birds calling are usually the crows. There's very few birds calling now. So, what you may call the sense objects change. The breathing is there as long as we're alive. So is the heartbeat and physical sensations, which may vary from a range of utter well-being to utter misery, pain, stress, tension. So there is no practice given, do this, do that. Follow your breathing, count the breath. If that's what you like to do, or some people tell me I like to do it when the mind is particularly frazzled, start out counting, which brings a noticeable calming down of the frazzled mind, sort of a coming together. If that's what you need to do, that's fine. Don't ask me for permission. Or whatever one may wish to continue doing here. One person, if I remember correctly, said, I like this place. It's so open and free. I feel I can do what I need to do. I hope you don't mind. Well, if it is within our 49 or 59 minutes of instructions on the balcony, then that's all right. So we don't impact each other too much. So, arriving here, sitting down quietly, and listening to talks, they are offered. One doesn't have to attend them, but if one is interested to hear what is being said, then there is constant reference to watching, observing, being in touch with, or listening, attending to what's happening right this moment. And maybe discerning immediately or after a while. It takes different periods of time, lengths of time for different people. Noticing the difference between caught up in thinking and planning and remembering with all its variations and modifications. The difference between that and a simple being present awareness of insects humming and fly buzzing. A deep breath, exhalation, sensation of the hands on the lap or touching each other, where the knees are touching or the heels, the buttocks, the sensations that go with it, feeling of warmth or coolness, and maybe that constant seeming stream of thinking, evaluating. Am I doing what she says I should be doing, or what I hear her say, or think she says I should be doing? Because I'm not saying what you should be doing, but this listening brain, with its categories of thinking, translates what comes in into certain categories. I ought to, I ought not to. This is good, that is bad. And can we become aware of that? Can that enter into awareness? This selective listening of ours, according to the unseen categories of listening, of thinking, in opposites, good and bad, right and wrong. Maybe if something is said with particular emphasis and passion, the brain already interprets that must be the right thing to do and already supplies the opposite, which is the wrong thing to do. Awareness is spoken about in a certain way, certain intonation of the voice. Unawareness or inattention must be the wrong thing. Somebody mentioned to me yesterday of talking about the open mind and the closed mind. Actually, I don't recall using those particular terms, but I may have. Or maybe different terms almost denoting the same thing. But what the person was trying to point out was that with hearing Toni speak about the open and the closed mind, there's already a feeling of, what did he say? One is what I should get. That's the right thing, the open mind. And setting up comparison and a goal. I think that's what he said. A goal is being subtly set up in this ever-organizing brain, organizing to its own, according to its own conditioning, which is not just personal, it's the cultural conditioning, the historical conditioning. So, in sitting down and listening to plane hum and fly buzz and cricket chirp, gentle breathing, sometimes breathing is almost imperceptible. It takes real close attention. I'm not saying far attention is bad. It takes real close listening to hear it. And sometimes the closer the listening, the less breath is there. One discovers that, not because one is following principles of meditation, because this reveals itself in being here, unpretentiously. So, what am I to do Yesterday we talked about the expectant mind, even on the first evening of the opening talk. And many people could relate to that, discovering expectation in one's body-mind, because it's not just in the mind, the whole body is in that expectant mode. To discover that, come upon it as one is sitting down quietly, not really quite knowing what to do, but something was mentioned about this expectant mind, and here it comes into view, wanting something to happen. Maybe having wanted something to happen before one even got here. This idea may have been sort of the surface generator to bring one here. I want something to happen. I'm saying surface generator because there may be much quote-unquote deeper stuff that brings one here. One doesn't know. Most people, when you ask them, may give this or that reason, but ultimately then say, I don't really know. Yes, I expect something, but maybe there's something else that impels one. Come to a place of quiet being, even if in that place of quiet being, what reveals itself is all the noise of the conditioned body-mind, expecting and wanting and fearing and disappointment and hoping. And the great probability of being sucked into these movements in all their details. Movement of fear. One thought arising in the mind, one thought, one single thought can mobilize this entire organism into a state of throbbing fear. Different people may experience it at different places. Heart palpitating, or feels like a tension or heavy weight in the solar plexus. Intestines may want to evacuate. Tensions or flexing in the muscles, which may make one want to run away. So, when that comes up, how much is one's entire being sucked into this movement of fear, so that it seems as a real warning of danger. One thought may have triggered the state of the organism, but the state of the organism in acute fear symptoms reports back to the brain that there is something to worry about. Watch it. It goes back and forth. It's very interesting. A fear-ridden body, which means a body displaying certain symptoms which have been triggered by a fear-arousing thought or memory or picture. That fear-ridden body makes the brain imagine that there is something to be afraid of, and it searches for it and can find it easily. There's always things that we can imagine to be afraid of. Will I succeed? Will they like me? Or do they still like me? Did I do something wrong? Am I making a fool of myself? You fill in the blanks. There's plenty of stuff in this body-mind to fill in the blanks of a fear-ridden body. And whatever now the brain comes up with, I may have done something wrong, and thinking about that possibility, the body keeps on going. It can't relax under the impact of thoughts running and multiplying or branching out. So that's why we mention so frequently when the topic of fear comes up, is it possible, as these symptoms manifest all over the place, to give some caring attention to them, caring attention to how this body feels? Not just satisfied with description. Well, I feel very afraid, I feel this way or that way. What I've been giving is descriptions. But to enter into the actuality of it, or may have never done it, or be quite skilled at it. But is it really entering into it without the need for further thinking about it? Because thinking about things is sort of our first, most habitual response. There seems anything the matter with us or with the world. To think about it, to think up ways out, ways to fix it. And is it possible to be with what has been mobilized and aroused in this body, to be with it, realizing that it's not necessary to think oneself out of this, but just to be with what has happened, what is concretely manifesting. That is makes sense, doesn't it? Even intellectually, it doesn't need thinking. It needs just being with it, allowing it to do its thing, to swell and recede, which is what all bodily manifestations do. They are triggered, they come and go, they may swell, particularly if there are still some thoughts about one's condition. They keep the swelling up. And the sooner it is detected, and that's possible, awareness makes that possible. Not holding out a goal, just talking out of the truth of it. Awareness detecting that thought about to trigger fear responses may even short-circuit that process. The spark doesn't jump from thought to glands and organs and muscles. But that may be more exceptional. The usual run is one didn't even notice the thought. And sometimes people are quite protesting of that this fear was caused by a thought or memory. No, it was just there was no thought. I haven't quite understood yet why this resistance to that there could have been a thought involved, but it's a matter all its own. When it didn't come into awareness. Because there may be conditions where just one, well, then it goes via memory still, just one view of a leaning tree causes remembrances and associations. Maybe one has been in a hurricane, on a wall, and then think about it, but the seeing visual impulse does all the connecting. We talked about that yesterday. Huge area of the brain devoted to visual stimulation and transmission. So, the sooner this process is discovered, seen, heard, listened to, attended to, the quicker it may abate. Because in the attending, there's no need for thinking about it. And a thought about my condition quiets down, it does not do any mischief for the time being. So here is another thing presented for watching or being aware of in coming to sitting quietly with quiet people. How do these connections work between thinking and emoting and thinking? And intending. Maybe one thought of what I intend to do. If one wakes up in the middle of the night, I think people who are very active know that phenomenon. One thought of what I ought to do, a letter to write, or maybe weed the border, or finish the cabin, and the body springs into action to grab the tool, go out, and the sleep is over. It needs sometimes one thought of what I intend to do tomorrow. But if it's caught quickly and the already mobilized body is given caring attention, then after a while it calms down again. Provided thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow has abated. If it doesn't abate, has too much momentum to it, the body will not go back into the sleeping mode. So watching all of that may not be so interesting when one wants to sleep. Who wants to be interested in anything but dreaming? Maybe not even dreaming. But here and sitting, to watch how things happen, how they happen in spite of my wanting them to happen in a different way. I do want to have a quiet mind. I do want to enjoy the peace and have a vacation, and instead what rushes in is fullness of thinking and emoting. I don't want that. And in spite of my wants, maybe powerful wanting, this stuff goes on because one thought connects according to age-old, decades-old, maybe millennia-old tracks in this mind, mobilizing physical responses. And where is this I that feels so much in control of this individuality that we think we are? It's a good time to ask that question. I thought I have free choice to do what I want, and instead things happen according to very momentous tracks, wiring, conditioning. So if one is interested, as many people are who come to meditation centers, what is this I, which is so much the center of our waking and sleeping life? What is it? Then try to find it in sitting and see what reveals itself. Well, in the course of time, depending on how the retreat proceeds, the questions and wonderings, we'll probably come back to this question of what am I? What is this strong feeling of individuality, this strong identification with this body-mind or mind-body? Strong feeling, this is me, and the attachment, feeling-wise, emotion-wise, security-wise, that go with it. The images that go with it, what I am. Not just one-dimensional or two-dimensional images, but they have the dimension of time. A whole story of images about my life, past, present, and future. And what an attachment to it. I'm not saying, because I'm speaking with the tone of voice I am, that one shouldn't have that. We have it, it's there, it's observable. Can it be observed intelligently? Compassionately? In one meeting we talked a lot about judgments, the speed with which judgments manifest. There's practically no sense perception. Hearing, seeing, reading, tasting, smelling, which is not seemingly instantly accompanied by a judgment. To watch that while one is sitting quietly. And then the question which was brought up yesterday, is it humanly possible to perceive anything without judgment? It seems the answer is no, was said. But I would be hesitant, more and more hesitant, to jump to any conclusions about ourselves based on what we have thought and learned and read and heard in the past. Our assumptions may not be true. But to watch the close proximity of perception and judgment, I like this, I don't like that. I don't like her, he looks very attractive. This is a bad smell and this is good food. Constantly needing, what is this judgment really, if we look at it a bit closer and take time with it, which is sort of a clue to investigating. Not just the speed of knowing it, but the slowness and patience of not knowing it, and therefore watching what is all involved in this. Not liking this person even though I don't know him or her. Not liking the sounds or the smells or whatever. It does take, doesn't it, first of all, some feeling, it's a justified feeling, or seemingly justified feeling of separation. Me standing outside as the judge, which already implies a lot, because if we are standing apart as the judge, we are something. We can feel our existence as somewhat important. We don't verbalize all this to ourselves, but it is there intrinsically. One can, if one watches it, can come upon those feelings of importance as we judge people or musical performances or whatever. We become the expert, or at least some semblance of an expert, which gives in itself satisfaction to this forever satisfaction craving organism. Being in the know about something. The satisfaction of being in the know, but the simple principle that's operating is the need to bring myself in relationship with what's heard. A deeply established habit. Needing, we say, I need to put my 2 cents into it. I need to be in relationship with what I see. And someone asks, is it possible to observe and hear, attend, with this habit of needing to bring myself as I know myself in relationship with it? It's a legitimate question. Because in listening to the plane or the chirping, people here, the arms gesticulating, the simple presence, there's no one in need of bringing oneself in relationship to it. It's not the point. It's not indicated. That mode at this instant is not there. It's just what's there, chirping and talking and looking at something. Memory supplying what people said and what has been experienced in the past, but not this need of bringing me as an entity to which there is attachment into relationship with what is seen and heard and said. So, can there be awareness of this impulse to bring oneself into relationship? You may put it in a different way. That's all I can say right now. It's my words. But words are not the crucial thing. The crucial thing is to see this need of judging. So there is an affirmation, an implied affirmation that I'm here as somebody, at least a little bit important. We don't say it to ourselves, but it happens this way. One can watch it. Maybe it's different for different people. If you feel it's not so when you judge or when judgment comes out, then let's talk about it. Let's look at it. Take the time to not slur over things, but to arrest them, if it were, and look at what goes on. So you could ask, well, is that what is being done here? Maybe one shies away now from saying what I'm supposed to do, although the words still want to come out that way. It's such a habit. Come to a place and I do what I'm supposed to do, what they expect me to do. But maybe one has understood about that. So, is that what meditation is all about here? Be in touch with all the conditioned habits. That present themselves, not all at a time. It takes a whole lifetime to come upon habits. There's always another one. One hasn't noticed one's whole life. All of a sudden, maybe in relationship with someone, somebody mirrors it, and one, to one's astonishment, realizes, I wasn't aware that I was like this, or sound like that, or look in this way, or that way. So is that the goal, the purpose, the meaning of sitting quietly, meditatively? Just to be constantly exploring and throwing light on this conditioned body-mind, and the dropping off of false assumptions about it. That there is an I, a me that is doing all of that, good and bad stuff. Or are there moments at a time when out of the simplicity of listening, and the spaciousness, the emptiness of it, there's nothing. Not a thing to grab a hold of. and no urge to grab a hold of anything. That is not separate from the moment of discovery. The rustling leaves in the wind. Which is the breath permeating everything. We will end here for today.